Well, I'm absolutely delighted this next band are on top of the pops. Patricia comes from Washington, D.C. Andrew, the lead singer, comes from London and speaks 5 languages, including Russian and Chinese, but he has promised to sing in English tonight, luckily. They've just released a great album called Floodland in the States, and tonight they're breaking in the first single from that. It was produced by Jim Steinman and recently went to number 7 in the British charts. With this corrosion, here are the Sisters of Mercy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thom and Joe show. My name is Tom.
My name is Joe.
And joining us is silently as her Dr. Avalanche of the Sisters of Mercy. Yeah, we're talking about the Sisters of Mercy this time. We are talking about the Sisters of Mercy's second album, Floodland, released in 1987. Joe, you do not strike me as the sort of person who listens to dark, intense gothic rock. Tell us about your experiences with goth music.
More this music than anything else, but I have a lot of blind spots in my music history because music is the most personal thing of your interest. It is the thing you tend to most tailor to yourself. So if you're not a person who music is your entire life, you're going to have blind spots, and you're going to have, and there's certainly this, but it does sound similar to a lot of things I would listen to. Like, my aesthetics are very 80s, although mine is more 80s music that was not made in the 80s, and we will get to that at the end of the show. But in any case, yeah, this sounds like a lot of things, such as the first song. It sounds like Duran Duran crashed. It sounds like Girls on Film by Duran Duran as done by Depeche Mode. So it's not. This part's I'm not unfamiliar with, but Norwegian like black metal is like over folk songs. That I'm not so familiar with.
Yeah. This is not your wheelhouse, but is adjacent to your wheelhouse because a lot of that 80s stuff sort of obviously feeds off each other because obviously you get post-punk into. So I think we'll start at the beginning. Gothic rock is sort of an interesting sort of I guess we could describe it as a subgenre of obviously post-punk and obviously new wave. It starts in the obviously the UK in the early 1970s. That in itself sort of feeds back to the Velvet Underground, which is obviously previously spoken about in the past, and the Doors. In other words, that sort of there is a lot of drones, there is a lot of repetition in the music, and Gothic rock is a very ambient sort of sense of genre. We then jump ahead a little bit to the post-punk era, where you get things like Susie and the Banshees, Magazine, and perhaps most crucially Joy Division, who then influenced bands like obviously the Sisters of Mercy across the sea, things like Bauhaus, and obviously you get crossover between obviously punk it goes into Gothic rock. For example, most notably the Damned, who are probably one of the first punk bands sort of go increasingly Gothic. By the sort of early 1980s, you're obviously getting the goth bands that most people who listen to this podcast will know. You'll get The Cure, obviously a very, is a jumping off step. You can hear the new wave influences in things like The Cure.
Yeah.
But obviously then you have things like The Birthday Party, the first band that Nick Cave was in, which is basically just horrifying atonal noise sort of stuff, and Nick Cave scrambling around stage, screaming obscenities and Old Testament sort of apocalypse. The Sisters sort of come in that sort of second wave. Short potted history of the band. The band starting Leeds in 1980. and name themselves because this is the sort of period of utter miserablism. They name themselves after a Leonard Cohen song. And essentially at this point it is a bassist, a guitarist, Andrew Eldritch playing drums until obviously her doctor, Avalanche, who is the only other member alongside Eldritch to be in the band all along, despite the fact he, inverted commas, is actually various drum machine programs running off, in this day and age, an Apple MacBook. We'll come back to sort of what exactly happens to the sisters, obviously, in the scene.
I don't think it was a MacBook. They did not have laptops.
No,
back then.
no, absolutely. But he's now currently running on a MacBook. He's
absolutely.
like, I think in that day and age he was actually, a drum machine, and obviously by the time we get to Floodland, it is mostly samplers, because obviously this incarnation of the band never played live. But again, we'll get to that. So I think we obviously need to talk a little bit about Andrew Eldritch. Andrew Eldritch is the singular member of the band. He is from Leeds. He is essentially the sort of the main figure of the band. He's obviously the vocalist. And basically what happens in sort of 1984/5 is the band sort of break up. And this is where things already start to go a little bit weird. So Eldritch, obviously, the other two members of the band are a guy called Wayne Hussey, who essentially we'll come back to in a moment. Basically, the rest of the band goes, you're a little bit annoying and we don't really like you, and most of the music is actually done by these three other guys, and Hussey is just basically the writer and the vocalist. Most of the musical heavy work is being done by Marks, Hussey and Adams, who basically go, we've had enough of you, we are leaving the band, and this is where things start getting, as I said earlier, obviously to you, Joe, before we started recording, this is where things getting a little bit pissing contest.
Absolutely.
So, Andrew Hussey, not Andrew Hussey, God Almighty. Hussey and Marks basically go off and they basically start a band. They basically are trying to do, new material. There's the split. I should obviously indicate is at this point fairly amicable. It's basically we are going in very different musical directions, and they kind of try and this is the sort of the Hussey division of the band try to put their stamp on the band. And they basically go, we're going to carry on with the Sisters of Mercy name. After all, we own all the equipment. We've borrowed the road crew. We're basically ready to go. But we're going to play under the name of the Sisterhood. Andrew Eldritch goes, no, this is my band. And he basically in 5 days. Alongside Patricia Morrison, who will come to, obviously, is probably the other major figure on this album, goes, no, we're going to record a song called Giving Ground in 5 days under the name of the Sisterhood. The same name the rest of the band are trying to use. We're going to basically beat you to the punch, and you end up with this sort of bizarre skeleton crew of Eldritch, Lucas Fox, who is probably most famous as the original drummer for Motorhead, a British musician called James Ray, and Alan Vega, who is the vocalist for a very, very famous American band called, very, very seminal underground American band called Suicide, basically making this scratch album so that Andrew Eldritch can get to the name of the Sisterhood first. It is complete garbage. Except for one thing. During the production of this album, Eldritch does a demo of a song called This Corrosion, which we'll come back to.
Yes.
So essentially, the pissing contest goes about as well as it can be expected. The single drops on January the 20th, 1986, the same day that Hussey and Adams, who are the Splinter group, who will eventually redub themselves as The Mission, basically are playing live. So, it's the mother of all gate crashes to go, yeah, we're going to completely upstage you. It's, and basically speaking, I mean, it gets to the point where basically they are warring over the contract, because there's basically this, somebody is basically going to the two parties of this. Well, one of you guys is going to have to come up with something because we got a contract with you. The person who gets music first gets £25,000. And the sisters go as far as on the sisterhood, the eldritch sort of version of the sisterhood goes as far as to put on the first track, which is the imaginatively named Jihad. Basically Patricia Morrison reading out the numbers 25000 in probably the most unsubtle middle finger in sort of gothic rock history. So, at this point, Andrew Eldritch basically goes, well, we're going to go off, we're going to retake the Sisters' name. The Mission gets signed to RCA, which was Sisters of Mercy's label at that point. And the Sisterhood album has sort of gone on to be regarded as relatively important in sort of the start of that sort of a more darker tinge, sort of electronic sort of techno thing. So even before we've got to the main record, we've got sort of a little bit of an underground classic.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, Andrew Eldritch buggers off to Hamburg in Germany and starts to build the record that we're obviously going to talk about today, which is obviously the Floodland. Where should we start with this, Joe? Because I think I've...
I know. This is kind of an inverse of our last episode where...
Yeah, this is...
I talked about everything, and you just kind of like, oh yeah, that was really good. and then now it's your turn. But
yeah, it's the inverse.
Yeah, this album, it reminded me of two albums, and we talked about this beforehand. There is 9 Inch Nails' Year Zero, which is a concept album about the apocalypse and how it gets taken over by a totalitarian Christian state. And then aliens come along. And then it kind of falls apart when the aliens come along, because where it kind of had a plan, and then the plan just kind of falls something else. And then there's the other one is Oasis's Dig Out Your Soul, which is another band about a very Christian apocalypse. And then it gets overshadowed by a week after the last single dropped, I believe. I mean, there are a lot of Oasis people who will correct me, but the band broke up.
Yeah,
and the band exploded and has never come back again. So that is another shadow. So that's kind of the two things, because Floodland is kind of a concept album, kind of not. But there's a very clear path on the first 3 songs.
Yeah.
Of what this is about, and this is basically about nuclear winter and Russia taking over the United Kingdom, which was really weirdly in a lot of people's mind. I mean, at this time, Thomas Dolby, I mean, this might have been earlier 80s, but wrote a song called One of Our Submarines is Missing, which is another song about the British Empire falling. So it was I don't know if you have any more insight on this. You were born in the 90s, so... But
I was born in the 90s. No, Eldritch has gone on record just generally around this album and just in general in interviews. Unsurprisingly, being from the industrial north, Andrew Eldritch is not a huge fan of Margaret Thatcher.
Nope.
who was in power at that point, and it's sort of, you can certainly read, obviously, even though a lot of this album was produced and is sort of inspired by the landscape around, Hamburg and East and sort of, northern Germany. You got to remember at this point Hamburg is barely 100 miles from a large and very, very frightening wall that divides Germany in two. Nuclear winter nuclear apocalypse is a very real and very frightening prospect, during as you would know, being there, obviously, in the late 80s, it's...
I mean, in America, like everything, you are sheltered from the worst of it, but you pretend you're in the midst of things.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You get like Rocky IV and stuff like that, where...
Oh, God, yeah.
And stuff like that. There's not a reality of what is going on, like in... Like, the first song, Dominion Mother Russia, just, like, has an anti-American poke about how maybe you have no business about being in Berlin, because it's essentially controlled by the Russians anyway, because, they're the people who are there. But then 2 years later, it ceases to matter. But that's another story entirely.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So... the biggest sonic difference between really, obviously, the first Sisters album, which, as we already discussed, is sort of like is an entirely different sort of, prospect. It is sort of very much a more electronic base. I mean, almost the entire album is produced on very early samplers. So obviously, the comparison to Nine Inch Nails is apt, given how, Trent Reznor builds and manipulates sound via a lot of, obviously, synth work and a lot of, samplers, etc. And it is sort of also more atmospheric. I mean, this album has been regarded as sort of one of the sort of founding pieces of a genre called dark wave, which is sort of, more atmospheric, more less. I mean, there are definitely guitars on this record, but there are, things that the sense of this album is, this big atmospheric sort of thing, which obviously, as we'll come on to, might be, particularly on the most famous 2 or 3 tracks on this album, are due to the presence of Mr. Jim Steinman. Who is Jim Steinman, Joe?
I actually don't have an answer for that. I don't.
Jim Steinman is the producer for Bonnie Tyler, Meatloaf.
Okay. Yeah.
So to have this sort of bizarre, this guy most notable for sort of these absolutely colossal sort of Wagnerian slabs of rock,
or just straight pop, really.
Like
Bonnie Tyler.
Oh yeah, but even so, there's that sort of even if, which is I think actually something which I don't think people ever go on. That's a damn good fit, considering a lot of Bonnie Tyler's work and a lot of Meatloaf's work was sort of in this sort of pseudo gothic, sensibility of giant bats and life after death and whatever the hell Eclipse of the Heart was about, which is apparently vampires or something. It's
or being a school teacher and having nightmares about your students or something. I don't know.
The height of gothic sensibility. So I think we need to sort of talk about very briefly who's actually on this album, because this is like, obviously you've got Jim Steinman, you've got the 40 Points Choir, which we'll come on to talk about when we get to This Corrosion, which is the centerpiece of the record. So here we're going to get into a point of contention, and this is where I get angry goths going, no, you're wrong. The band, obviously, as you can see from the front cover, is at this point technically 2 people and a drum machine. So obviously on the cover, which you're probably looking at now, because obviously I'm going to put the cover up, because that's how we do these episodes.
It's 2 people on the moon.
It's 2 people in the moon. Maybe the moon is actually representing Dr. Avalanche. Or maybe the water. Anyway, it's a very gothic image. It's, Andrich Eldritch with his massive black sunglasses. And, in the background you've got Patricia Morrison. Now, here is a very interesting thing. Morrison is obviously a fully paid up member of the band. She's obviously plays on some of the material which Eldritch did as the Sisterhood. There is every chance that basically Patricia Morrison does not play a note on this record. Which is kind of impressive. You know, obviously she's hugely part of the visual look of this record. You know, obviously you can see her in the background. Yeah, she does not play a note on this record. There is every bass part is Eldritch on this record. Mm-hmm. Which is, you know, apparently she also does backing vocals. It's difficult to sort of know why. The only other person who appears on this album is the guitarist, is Eddie Martinez, who is one of Jim Steinman's sort of session musicians who plays the guitar solo on this Corrosion. That's it. You know, this is very much a...
Well, and whoever did the sax solo.
Yeah, which, again, might be synthesized. I mean, there's so many...
Yeah, it might be synthesized. It's during this time in the 80s, I can't say it's hard to tell what is synthesized, but there's a lot of, stuff in the background going on that's it's less obviously synthesized than other things that we'll get to later.
Yeah, I mean, there's like stuff on this album which, you know, it is the late 80s, you know, music done purely electronically with samplers and stuff is still, you know, we're talking, you know, probably the era where MIDI was, you know, was probably prior to MIDI we're talking, which is sort of like, okay, where should we begin? Should we just dive straight into this thing?
Dive straight to the first song, because it is a very good marker of what we are dealing with.
Big drum machines is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, big drum machine.
That sort of chiming.
It is goth, but it is driving. Like I said, there's a sax solo in the middle of this song because it's the late 80s, and of course we need a sax solo. Everything has sax solos.
Absolutely, because, you know, that guy who did Careless Whisper is not going to go away, and he will strike again at any point in the 1980s. Yeah, so Dominion Mother Russia is absolutely about American imperialism and the Cold War. I mean, Andrew Eldritch was in, you know, this is 1980s, you know, most of the writing of this record in terms of the lyrics, etc., is done in, you know, late 1986, at which point Chernobyl has gone bang.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got radioactive pollution being sort of leached out over, you know, the United States. And obviously, you know, it is from, as you said, Joe, it is a song about, you know, that sexiest and most gothic of subjects, international geopolitics.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very much a, you know, but it obviously, you know, the album, as the title would suggest, does have its sort of focus around, you know, water. The water motifs keep coming up and up again. This is this is obviously one of the singles of the album. This is one of the tracks that Jim Steinman produced. I fucking love this. This is like a goth rock standard. This is very much, you know, you go to any nice, good quality goth club in London, they will play this because it's good.
Interesting. But, I mean, it does fit because it is definitely, like I said, it's like a Duran Duran song smashed into Depeche Mode, and this came out because it has that driving drum beat of like a Girls on Film, but there's, you know, that little sense of, you know, the droning voice in the background, and
and Andrew is a good vocalist. I think we could agree on this, but he is a very. It's difficult, I think, to see him in any other genre than goth, because
he is sometimes the only thing that reminds you this is a goth rock album is his voice. Because otherwise it would just jump off to like some other, you know, direction. I think the best thing I would say is you would find most of these songs maybe in an episode of Twin Peaks. Like, it's that kind of aesthetic where it's accessible. There is this very, very, I don't want to say pop, but it is a very, if you heard this on the radio anywhere in Great Britain, you wouldn't think twice about it. But there is that darker level on what it's really about. So, like, if, you know, Sisters of Mercy showed up at the Bang Bang Bar, you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, as Nine Inch Nails did in the revival, obviously. But I definitely think that this is sort of, it does this very clever thing where it is essentially, you know, the Mother Russia part of this is the same song. There's not like a massive musical change.
I mean, that was kind of my problem with it, is you can't tell when it switches to part 2. It's just the lyrics change from I don't want to take genius.com at its word, but it's just like about the poems of Ozymandias and you know, resurrecting, you know, monuments in the desert or whatever, which is secretly about America, like, trying to put its stamp on Berlin or something like that. But and then there's the Mother Russia, which is they are about to rain down nuclear war on everybody else.
Yeah, and like has this line, you know, a White House in a red square, and it's like, I wonder what this could be about. And, you know, gambling metaphors.
Like,
and, you know, I do love the turn of phrase "stuck inside Memphis with a mobile home," and it's like, which is obviously, you know, allusion to Bob Dylan, and it's like this idea of just, you know, somewhere outside Graceland as the bombs descend. But as I said, there is that dark sense of humour.
Mushroom clouds are raining down.
Yeah, it's as I said, it starts the album off very well in terms of both sonically and, you know, the tone on this, which is this sort of, you know, waiting for the end sort of, I guess, sort of vibe.
Yeah, which is definitely the sake of Flood 1, where it has a very, you're drunk or drugged out or whatever in a bar while this is going on, and then, you know, the feelings of, like, you know, the flood or, you know, the nuclear war or whatever it is starting to sink in.
Yeah, and that's almost lethargic beat to it, where it sort of, you know, almost pulls itself along with it.
Yeah, it goes full Depeche Mode.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't really talk about that sort of. Although I think these guys predate Depeche Mode. Oh no, I'm at 85, so they would be contemporaneous with each other, I believe. Yeah, so sort of. But it is that very. I mean, this is probably where it gets to its sort of most. Almost Lou Reedish. You could hear, you know, somebody like the Velvet Underground doing this on guitar, just sort of that sort of to it, where it's sort of, you know, obviously the flood, the sense of this song sort of comes back for Flood Part 2. Apparently, according to Andrew Eldritch, this is about sex. In which case, Andrew, what?
That is some very relaxed sex you're having. I mean, and it's not relaxed making love sex. It is just having sex to have sex, but it's taking a really damn long time.
It's just it does, and the only thing I will say about this is it is an album that sort of takes its time about it. It is a vibe, and there is a lot of that sort of, you know, as I said with the Velvet Underground, that sort of almost repetition, this sort of almost mesmeric sense to a couple of these songs, particularly the two Flood songs, where it's sort of, you know, it goes over these sort of, you know, almost repeatedly goes over these imageries of, you know, of you know, flood water and, you know, ships and, you know, the idea of this encroaching flood. But at the same time, it is, as a lot of these songs tend to be, it sort of goes, there is this undercurrent to the album. There obviously is the water element. But throughout the entire record, there is also this sort of sense of, I don't know, there's particularly when he comes to the sort of the sackcloth and ashes, which obviously this lyric that gets repeated over and over. It's sort of like, as we'll come on to with this corrosion, there is a sense of, you know, I guess sort of like, repentance. It's like, particularly when it's sort of aimed at, as we'll get to with the centerpiece of this album, is Corrosion, of sort of these barbs against what were obviously the band that were now the Sisterhood, and these people who've stabbed me in the back, and this sort of idea of these water sort of washing them away. Again, I like this song. I think the second part of the sort of the flood duology on this is better, but we'll come on to that shortly.
The second version is definitely better. This one kind of just sits there. And it fits the mood because it's kind of a very you're sitting there in a bar and you're kind of like chemically impaired out of your mind and just
it's that very
seeing this stuff happen, and then the
almost sort of drugged out sort of dream of sort of water encroaching, and you wake up to find you've sort of spilled your pint on yourself. And then we get to Lucretia, My Reflection, which is again another of the singles on the album. This is apparently a song written for Patricia Morrison by Andrew Eldritch, and it's about Lucretia Borgia, but also who obviously is a phenomenally powerful woman of the Renaissance period, but also Lucretia who obviously caused the collapse of the Roman Empire. So we got again this sort of sense of corrosion of collapse of the empire down that sort of repeats.
But, it's also about big machines and the two worlds, the West and the East, and it's about another empire going down. Obviously, the British Empire, because they're British.
The bass line of this, by the way, reminds me very, very strongly of Gouge Away by the Pixies, and I don't know if that's a deliberate allusion. It's got that it's almost identical to Gouge Away by the Pixies, and I which is particularly amusing because I think Gouge Away actually post-dates this song, so I don't know if the Pixies are very big Sisters of Mercy's fan, or if it just happens to sound similar. I don't know. Anyway, there's obviously this. If the first two tracks are about the decline of the American Empire, this is very much this is about the fall of British Empire.
Yeah, this is it, and then it crosses like three other things, obviously. Because it's taking stabs at the band, and it's about all of these other things. So although you couldn't tell if it's about Borgia or I can't really tell, but I think if I had an issue with this album, I don't really touch the lyrics because I don't want to say they're generic, but they are very vague, except when they're specifically about something. And when they're specifically about something, they are 100% about something.
Oh, so definitely.
It's trying to be that it's about anything you want it to be, but there is a very specific thing it wants to be about. And then once it touches it, you can't like go back and it's like, oh, this is about this now, because like Lucretia, My Reflection, it is I absolutely do not feel it's anything about except UK falling to Russia or something like that.
Yeah, but also there's like this sense of get down, get undressed, get pretty, but you and me, we got the kingdom, we got the kids. Like, and it's a song about the British Empire and being really horny for your bandmate because it's like. Yeah, and it's like, there is a sense that occasionally I think Andrew is a little bit too self-alluding. It's like, we've got this, Dance the Ghost with Me. Well, the band Ghost Dance, this is my other friend, Gary Marks, who left the band and sort of started a band called Ghost Dance. And it's like, Andrew, this is a little bit on the nose. Can you stop writing about literally what you've just been doing for the last 18 months?
You're asking goths to not be catty and gossipy.
It's like, no, it's like, can't you be like Robert Smith and write songs about cats? Or oh, what's this, Robert? It's a song about the apocalypse. Thanks, Robert. Well done. Yeah, we'll get on to we'll do the Smiths at some not the Smiths. The Smiths. We're not doing the Smiths. We're never doing the Smiths. We're not doing the Cure at some point because I absolutely adore the Cure.
We'll do the Cure. Cause
happy
the Cure
happy
is
goth
my realm of goth stuff besides like Nine Inch Nails and industrial, but
yeah, well, which obviously takes that sort of gothicism in a less contemplative, more sharp, angry things sort of direction. I really like Lucretia My Reflection. I think it may actually be my second favourite song on this album.
I like it just fine. It's just a very weird... Like, I can't remember what it sounds like because I remember what Dominion Mother Russia sounds like and I remember what this Corrosion sounds like. And then when you listen to the whole album together, like... I lose the sound of My Reflection. I will say this, and I this is not meant as a criticism of the Sisters of Mercy or Gothic rock in general. This is like an album. This is an album that I think you can have on in the background on repeat because it is sort of like it creates a mood, and apart from the two single tracks, it is very much. You could run these tracks. I mean, several of these tracks actually segue into each other via, little clip bits that just carry on into the next song. If you were to take out the two songs that Steinman worked on, you could essentially release this as one big long song because it sort of carries on this sense of a mood. Yeah.
They're all about the same tempo. They've all got sort of the same sort of sonic, fingerprint to themselves. That's not meant as a criticism. That's not meant as like a dig against all goth rock sound. No. The Sisters of Mercy sound like the Sisters of Mercy, etc.
It's not a criticism. It's just when I have to talk about this album for about an hour, and I'm listening to it, I am having a hard time. I have to like get myself to focus because I cannot. Paying attention to individual parts of this outside of Dominion Mother Russia because it is Dominion Mother Russia is the most. This is produced like a pop song from the '80s, and it's meant to grab your attention. And outside of that, there's a general atmosphere and a general feeling, and some of it is Eldritch gets drowned out by the drum machine. Some of it is like your mind will just stick to the beat and just stay on that warbling beat in the background. It can be a hard album to pay attention to and really get into.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. There is sort of like I think it is an entirely subconscious thing that like waves. It's sort of you difficult to find where the start of one trough is and the bottom of one trough and where the peak of the it is like being in the middle of a sea. You don't really have any, or the middle of a floodland, and you don't really have any point of reference because everything has been swept away by the waves, by the flood. Perhaps I enjoy a little bit too much. Track 4, 1959. This is not a real piano.
No, and that's why I don't like this song. It's Eldritch's favorite. It is not mine because
it is not my favorite either.
I have a severe problem when you're trying to use synthetic stuff to imitate real things.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely.
My ear can tell, and my ear gets really annoyed. Like in the '90s, when the History Channel, all they had was like synthetic orchestra stuff, and I could not stand the music to any of it because it's just like they would do like.
So to draw it back to the world of black metal, I'm going to make a really weird comparison. This is particularly a problem with I would say late 80s and early 90s records where they have sort of probably to I would say mid 1995 1996 when they sort of start to get sampling synthesizers, properly
Yeah.
down, or you can really imitate things. I mean, let's draw a completely random example. You can, you compare the soundtrack to Final Fantasy VII, which is all done via MIDI, all done,
yeah.
MIDI, and it's sort of, and some of it still stands up, and then you have Underneath a Rotting Pizza, and it sounds like a fucking Chuck E. Cheese animatronic music. A Chuck E. Cheese
there are
animatronic.
people who literally replaced the MIDI soundtrack of Final Fantasy VII on the PC versions with better samples.
Yeah,
because
I mean, even the PC version literally replaces it with a better produced version.
Like especially the end credits to Final Fantasy VII, it is bad because it is trying to impersonate like a grand
orchestra.
It is supposed to be like an overture except at the end. But of all of these themes, and it's in a grand level, and then you go from Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VIII, which has an actual orchestra, and it sounds so much better. Even though, if we have to speak about Final Fantasy VII, I really love Final Fantasy VII. I still hate Final Fantasy VIII. So that's not a dig at quality or anything. It's just like the soundtrack of 7 is hard to listen to by itself, but there is that. It is that quality to bring it back, and I'm trying not to go off on too many things that we have here in 1959, where the piano, there's supposed to be an echo, there's supposed to be a fullness of sound, and it's just a weak ding, 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 or where
the reverb,
there's no reverb. There's just this weak ass piano sound, and my ear does not buy it. It doesn't like it.
No, and the problem is, it's not like this is like Andrew Eldritch in his bedroom making this record.
No.
We'll get to this Corrosion shortly. This is not a cheaply made record. I am a little bit amused that Andrew didn't just like create this piece that he wanted somebody to play and then go, right, now learn it by ear, play it back with an actual piano. It's this sort of... I don't get me wrong, and I appreciate that obviously, it is a very personal touch, and this is his favourite song, I would anticipate, for a lot of reasons, but Andrew, this sounds like arse.
1959 is the year he was born, by the way.
Yeah, and it's sort of very much a song about innocence and, the wind blowing, and obviously, again, it's.
But I cannot get into the meaning of this song because it sounds like ass, and I don't want to listen to it.
No, and end of side 1. So this is like obviously on the vinyl version, which most streaming services.
We basically did the vinyl version without the extra tracks just to keep it concentrated.
The CD version adds between, depending on which version you've got, 2 and 4 tracks. The cassette version, remember when they had those, adds Torch to the end of side 1. We didn't listen to any of those. We didn't talk about any of those.
Yeah. Well, cassettes are making a comeback because
cassettes are making
Oasis,
a comeback.
for their 25th anniversary of Be Here Now, are re-releasing the cassette version of Be Here Now, and lots of bands are doing similar.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
they came
Stranger
back,
Things is going to help. Stranger Things is going to help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk. Speaking of Oasis, we might have something else to mention at the end of this episode, might we, Joe?
Yes. Okay. Anyway.
Anyway, and then side 2 begins.
This Corrosion, it's my favorite song in the album, but I don't think it should be because it is an extremely catchy, extremely driving song, and the song is meant to mock itself.
Yes. So I have gone on record, and I'm going to go on record now, and I will say this: this Corrosion is the final boss of Gothic rock. You cannot get bigger. So this is where we need to talk about Jim Steinman. So Jim Steinman obviously is very famous for this style of, very famous for, because unfortunately he passed away last year, of this sort of style of song, which is, this sort of absolutely maximalism. It's, Wagnerian bombast. this is a man, after all, who produced Bat Out of Hell, an album that is so big and so ridiculous that, again, we'll probably talk about it at some point, because I like Meatloaf.
Yeah.
And it is just big. I mean, so this song alone, and you've got to remember this is 1987, numbers we're using it. This song cost £50,000 to make. And the music video cost £50,000 to make.
Yeah.
That is £100,000 of 1987 level money.
That would be about $100,000 for the song, $100,000 for the for the video, and it would not be. It's not like Puff Daddy and the Family videos, which cost millions of dollars to produce, but they made it back easily. Because the music video. This is a goth rock UK album, and this didn't really get over here. That I don't know how much influence it has over here, but it's not one of the goth touchstones in the United States.
Yeah. So, how would we just? This Corrosion is basically. It starts with this sort of big sort of voice choir, this typical Cyberman choir. And then it kicks into the drum machine, and it's like the first time I heard this, one of my friends obviously sends me a lot of remixes. Somebody did a 30-minute remix of this, and I will put it in the video description because it's one of the best things I think I've ever heard. Where it basically loops that introductory choir for about 20 minutes, and it sort of sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. I'm gonna link it in the video, and then it kicks into the song, and it is. There is a demo of this, and it's sort of very, bleepy. You can still hear the sort of thing. But it is, as you said, it is a mockery of the mission. This is a £100,000 fuck you to the mission.
Yeah, because I mean, you could get to the bigness of the song and how it is driving. It is a massive, amazing song, and then you get to the lyrics, and it's intentionally this nothing of hey now, no, like Sing Corrosion, oh, and it is basically about how Eldritch thinks the mission is perverting his music and just making it this absolute nonsense of rock slop.
Oh god, I mean the lyrics are absolutely biting. I mean it's this the lyrics, the verse lyrics themselves, which are these sort of almost cliche upon cliche upon cliche of basically, because the thing is with the mission and with obviously Wayne Gacy is he would basically start a song with the title and go, oh, we've written the vampires kiss. Oh, this song is about vampires. Let's sing about vampires. And it's like, this very... I hate to say it, an authentic way of producing a song. Oh, this has got a really good title. Let's work backwards from the title. And it's sort of, it's got, there's these ideas of, I've got nothing to say I ain't say before I bled, or I can't bleed no more. I don't need no one to understand when the blood runs cold in the hired hand. It's like, I wonder what this could be about. Cowardly backstabbing band
especially,
members.
I got nothing to say I ain't said before.
And it's just like, and obviously here we get the title drop, which is Floodland and Driven Apart, which is obviously it's Andrew Eldritch has an axe to grind against the mission. They are sellouts. They basically have stolen his contract. They tried to steal his band.
If this was a little later, he would actually put a sample of an axe grinding on this album.
Oh god, it would be it's. I love this song. It is big, and it's sort of. And this is the thing. I think we said before this episode, or we said that does he have like a really weird sense of humor? Because it's like, this is the Sisters of Mercy's most famous song. Like, this is this is certainly the best chart performance of any of their songs. I can remember, because they repeat Top of the Pops in the UK, a lot on the television. You get obviously things, and this went to in the charts. This went to number 17 in Germany, which is their other, obviously as you can guess, because Andrew Eldritch has relocated the band there. No. 7th in the UK singles chart. Obviously, this is a cut down 4-minute version of a 4-minute single mix. Because, God almighty, I don't think anyone would sit through all 10 minutes of this.
But
and even, number 38 on the UK dance club songs, they did push across. But it's also the fact that, like, there's so many covers of this. Like, this is by far their most covered song. I still think Lucretia, My Reflection is the more beloved of the songs between because it's got that sort of...
But also it is the fact that it is mocking itself. It is like a... It is... It's going to be a weird comparison, but it's like a Robbie Williams song where there's this level where it is a really, really good pop song, but then you get deeper into it, and it's really about how absolutely terrible everything within the making of this song is, or because it is a nothing song, or in like Robbie Williams, like Millennium. It's secretly about us having no direction and us, getting high on drugs and just, whatever.
Oh God, yeah. It is, it's...
And then you get to, it's not actually supporting this, but because it sounds so good, people will just listen to it and not give a damn.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's like, the music video of this, which features Andrew Eldritch wearing a leather jacket over basically otherwise shirtless and wearing those sort of big goth sunglasses and, being rained on in a post-apocalyptic wasteland is also, fairly, visually informing of sort of what they're trying to do. Well, this is a £50,000 music video. It looks pretty good. It's, this is, a sense of gothic maximalism. Not every gothic thing will be small and, intimate. Some of it is just big and bellicose and very, very silly. And we're back to Flood Part 2. Which is, I like Flood Part 2.
Yeah, it's good. It's like a fuller version of, Flood 1. And if Flood 1 was driven by the beats, this is just by... Yeah. I think it kind of does a disservice when the drum machine pops on because the atmosphere is so good, but then it pops on, then you kind of get dominated by the drum machine. But other than that, it's, it's real... I don't have a whole lot to say except that, it's a much more fuller version of Flood 1.
Yeah. I'm going to make a really weird comparison. This reminds me in a good way, particularly because obviously I think at some points it is Eldritch's speaking voice rather than his singing voice. There is a difference. One of the tracks of Patti Smith's Horses, which is sort of, again, it starts with this very low-key vocal over it, and again they, Horses has a lot of water imagery of this, so I don't know if it's just a comparison I'm drawing, or perhaps I like this song. I again prefer this to part to over Flood 1. Moving on, we Driven by Like the Snow is another sort of gothic-y song. This is apparently about one of Eldritch's ex. I
think the problem with this is it's disconnected from the rest of the album. Like, there is nothing that attaches this to the apocalypse. No. There's nothing that attaches this to the band breaking up. It is just a random, goth song. I mean, it's pretty, it's good, nice, but I don't have a lot to say about it because it's not connected to anything. It doesn't fit the mood. It doesn't quite fit what was going on before, and it just exists by itself, and it is not a great enough song that it can exist by itself without. It's one of those songs that fades into the background for me.
Yeah, I think, and this is a very subjective thing. I tend to, like every single music episode, I tend to go, well, what if you sequenced it like this? The problem is that this Corrosion comes at about the mid part of the record, and everything after this corrosion sort of feels a little bit anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to put this corrosion at almost the end of the record, we're going to talk about the final track on the record shortly. I feel it has to sort of, because then it almost bookends between, the two Steinman tracks, between, these two big monolithic pieces of, music with pop, sort of gothic-y pop. I feel that the middle section of it wouldn't be as the later section of the album, I don't think would feel as anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if it was earlier, maybe not next in 1959, because then the album would slow down. But
but no, there's obviously, and I weirdly enough, as I said, the sequencing on the CD version I think is slightly better, because it puts the nearly 12-minute version of Netherland right towards the end of the record. Netherland is the final track on the album and is described as a fragment because I don't think Andrew Eldridge had actually finished this yet. There is on the CD version on the 2006 reissue, Netherland, which as I said, let me just double check this, make sure I'm not being completely rude. No, absolutely. The song is basically unreleased until 2006, so it's a little bit of of an idea, a little bit of concept put at the end of the album. I don't dislike this. Again, it's sort of, there's a promise of something else. It's not bad. It just ends. It's sort of just there, and it's sort of like, okay, fine.
Okay.
Well,
you have a ticket to Syria. It's going to be a couple decades before Syria is unlivable, but Muammar Gaddafi's still running it, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's Libya, Joe.
Oh, Libya. No, what the hell?
I think it was still Assad who was in charge of Syria at that point.
Assad, okay, yeah, but it's like I don't. It's there, and then it ends, and yeah. I don't have an opinion on it because there's not enough there to have an opinion about.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of it's not bad. It's just there it is. Mm-hmm. Fine, great, and then the album ends.
Yeah.
So much to say. I mean, the Sisters of Mercy would then go on to do an album called Vision Thing in 1990, which is essentially more of the same, but a harder rock element, and by that time there were actually other people in the band. That was in 1990. They have toured basically ever since, and have not released anything since.
Okay.
But I love this record.
Okay. Yeah, I figured. I mean,
I like gothic rock. I like, I like the sound of the Sisters of Mercy. I like, that sort of push and pull between, one man and his oddly monikered drum machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm fine with it. It's not one of my favorites, but it is.
No.
It definitely fits with a certain aesthetic I have, and we'll talk about this when we're going to what I'm selecting next. But it's really good. I don't connect with it on a personal level just because I don't know. There is a wall between me and what Eldridge is feeling or something. It might be, or it might just be the beat of the drum machine. It might just be anything, but it's just I don't. There's good music, and then there's music you connect to, and this is good music, and then it's. I'm not going to talk a lot of trash on it, except for 1959, which it has that kind of, it in hindsight, once we have these, the Stranger Things dark wave and all of this re-evaluation of the 80s from the Drive sound after the Drive soundtrack.
Oh god, yeah.
What was good about it? I mean, if you're living in the times, it's like hard to tell. Like, oh, that's just shit. Like don't replace real music with this crap, or like like on the like pop side of the 90s, like they would replace all of the instruments with like just synth samples or something like that. It would be like this, like the saxophone on Eddie Murphy's like New Jack Swing album would just be, and they would have the girls in the background playing the music, and like, that's not actually an instrument playing. Stop that. No. You
Eddie,
idiots.
Stop it. You could afford a good saxophone.
An actual band. So
put it back.
But yeah. So I mean, there's that kind of it that overall, I liked it.
Yeah, I could understand, and that's the thing. Gothic rock in particular, and obviously, because I am a little goth. I have the big boots and everything. I like a lot of music, but I do love.
I do not have any goth aesthetic in me at all, because I cannot wear black. I will sweat because my core is way too hot. I will burn. I will pass out because I have low blood pressure. But I do have. There is an attitude, and there are things I like about it, and there are some, like, I will, if you've ever seen my Twitter feed, like @Joe Stratman, it is. I will talk about these popular things, these nice things, and like humorous stuff, and then I will get into how once we hit 2024, we are all fucking doomed. So I do have that attitude. It just doesn't show up until it comes seemingly out of nowhere.
Joe, they add 3 inches to my height.
Okay, that works.
I am very short. I am 5'2". I need those inches.
I'm 5'11". I am the definition of an average man, except I am nothing like an average man. I am a ghost. I am a ghost. I belong nowhere. Like I like sports. I don't belong with the sports people. I like video games. I don't quite belong to the video games. I like anime. I don't watch nearly enough anime to be with the anime people, and I definitely don't know enough about music to be with the music people. And people will talk to me about like how I don't know shit. Because I had 1 year of electronic music training, and that led nowhere because I have nothing in my head to compose. And I was a percussionist for a year, and I can't keep 4/4 time. I am worse than Oasis's original drummer. So I do have like the attitude of I do not belong here. I do not belong anywhere. But so I get the spirit of like Gothic stuff, even though I am one of the least Gothic people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's I mean I will go out and I will go out on a thing and I will say I question the tribalism of goth. I think it's very don't get me wrong, I know a lot of goths. Goths are to a person absolutely lovely people.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are a lot nerdier and a lot happier than you would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. But there are the people who you're not real enough. And once you get to how real are you for a goth? And then it's just like, oh, go fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a crow? No. Why do you not have a crow? Anyway, Joe, what are we talking about next? First off, what are we talking about next? Well, next episode.
Next time. So, before we get to my selection, we are going to do, like we said, it's the 25th anniversary of Oasis's Be Here Now. Now, Oasis was the favorite band of my adolescence, so it is my de facto favorite band. And you're British, so obviously you get inundated with all Oasis all the time, even like 10 years after they've disbanded. You cannot get
Noel
news
and Liam are
about Liam and Noel Gallagher. So on this end, we are going to talk about
Be Here Now.
Like Be Here Now, which is the album they made at the pinnacle of their power, and it certainly had all of that bombast, but a few years later, Oasis's Standing on the Shoulder of Giants came out and only sold 100,000 copies in the U.S.
Mm.
And it's
what the fuck happened,
so
Joe?
what the fuck happened, and why did it happen, and all of that. It's like Be Here Now is one of, then it became the most infamous album. Obviously, Todd in the Shadows did a video on it, but that is for next time. For next time, whenever we talk about my choice, we are going to talk about the Midnight's Endless Summer. The Midnight are one of those 80s bands, not from the 80s, that formed after like Drive. And, so we are going to get into what my aesthetic of the, 80s music is.
Coincidentally, both of them contain sunglasses and drum machines.
And sax solos, although the Midnight has an actual dedicated sax player, so there is that.
Yeah. Obviously, next episode, as in next numbered episode, number 16. We've got to 16 episodes, Joe. Somehow.
Yeah. Aside from all of our asides.
Yeah. Apart from, I think we're actually nearly 60 episodes as a duo, but who's counting at this point?
But we've had 60 episodes, and like a quarter of them are official episodes.
Yeah, this is how we do things around. We will be talking, just to remind you, about cute girls doing camping stuff in laid back camp.
Laid back girls. Or laid back camp.
Laid back camp. If you want to find us on social media, we can be found on Twitter at NotSoFinalProd. And if you want to obviously support us via Patreon, you can follow us. You can come and see us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Thom and Joe Show. Tom is spelled with a H. So, Dr. Avalanche, what is your view on the album? Your words doom you, sir. Until next time.